So we're going to have a look at a couple of the things that Vince, or the Home Business King, said this morning on his channel. He talks about the fact that he's going for a job next week and that he lives in a mobile home. I'm going to play at the end him saying that both of those things. Now, this to me is quite an extraordinary thing for a person who is self-proclaimed the Home Business King, who can help you. This is what is his claim. This is stated in the header of his channel. He can help you build an empire from the comfort of your own home. Now, let's think about that logically. How many people in the world do you think who own empires or have helped other people create empires live in mobile homes and still work a job? Can you guys think of any? Because I can't. If you can think of one, please leave it in the comments. But to me, Vince reminds me of two people. One is my father, and the second is Gary Kornegay. Now, Vince is basically an exaggerated version of my father. Now, my father tells people every day he can help them create a six-figure passive income for life. He can help them create time freedom and spend more time with their families. Vince's claim is a lot more extreme. He says that he can help you create an empire, not just a little $100,000 a year job, an empire. And then there's Gary Kornegay. Now, to me, this man is very, very similar to Vince. I think there's a difference, though. Now, again, it depends on which story you choose to believe that Gary Kornegay tells you. Story number one is that he was poor and he came from the ghetto almost. And story number two is that his family was extremely wealthy. He talks about how his father gave him a car. No, not a car, a house. A house as a wedding gift. He talks about these other businesses that he had. And of course, he failed in those businesses, but succeeded in the MLM business. Now, the difference between Gary and Vince is that Vince doesn't have any of these possessions that people who are looking for an MLM mentor look for. So when Gary says that I've got all this from MLM, that gives him extreme credibility. A lot of people, when they see a person in a fancy suit, with a fancy watch, driving a fancy car, living in a fancy house, and that person says to them, I can help you create an empire. I can help you become retire early, earn millions of dollars from MLM. They tend to believe it. It's a lot harder for someone like Vince, who doesn't have any of that stuff. He lives in a mobile home. He's working a job. It's a lot harder for him. But the similarities are very, very similar. They both got onto Always Marco's channel the same way. They had the confidence. They actually thought they could get onto Marco's channel, debate Marco. Marco is one of the most knowledgeable people about MLMs on the planet. This guy is very, very good at debating. But these guys had so much confidence that they thought they could out-debate Marco. That says something about the level of confidence that these guys have. But, I mean, really, let's think about this. To think, for a person who's living in a mobile home, working a job, to actually think that he can convince people that he can help them create an empire from the comfort of their own home. How much confidence would you need to have? I mean, I'm confused. Is Vince... To me, there's only two options here. Vince is either a con artist who is so confident in his ability to convince people and manipulate people that he thinks that even though he doesn't have an empire, even though he's never helped anyone create an empire, that he can trick people and make them think that he has. I mean, that's an unbelievable amount of confidence. Option number two is that he's deluded and actually believes this stuff. That he actually thinks that he can help people create an empire from the comfort of their own home. I mean, that is an extraordinary amount of confidence or insanity. I don't know which it is. it says something about. I think though both of these guys are showing the way they talk and the way they sort of the way they react when, or more Vince than Gary, but when Vince is asked a question by me, all I've asked him is he's really during a Julie Anderson live stream that I was on, he threatened me with physical violence. The way, and his other tactic with me is to say that I don't have the credentials or the qualifications to debate him. Now, this is a tactic that I'm very familiar with because I've been dealing with this for 23 years. My father and my father's sponsor used exactly the same tactics. When I would ask a very reasonable, sensible question about who is buying these products, how are you going to move these products? So many products that you're going to earn millions of dollars a year. When after years he was going backwards. When I'd ask a reasonable question, you said you were going to have a passive income for life of $50,000 in 6 months' time. When I asked him that question 4, 5, 6 years later, the response was to attack me personally, to attack my lack of credentials, my lack of the fact that I didn't drive a fancy car, didn't own a house. Now, whether I own a house or not, whether I'm educated or not, whether I have credentials or not, does not make my point valid or invalid. Whether I'm a multi-millionaire who's highly educated or whether I'm homeless and uneducated does not make my point any less valid that Vince does not own an empire and has not helped anyone create an empire. That is why Vince has never actually attacked what I'm asking him. In fact, he hasn't even addressed it. Instead, he's attacked my channel. My channel's no good. I don't have many subscribers. I mean, whether I have the best YouTube channel on the planet or the worst, even if I have no subscribers, it doesn't not change the fact that I'm asking him a valid question that he cannot answer. He cannot answer the question, who have you helped to create an empire? And what is your empire? He can't answer those questions, so instead, he will attack me personally. It's a deflection tactic, and it's not going to work with me. Now, I think Vince, he's been in the MLM game for decades, and this is a tactic that he's probably used in the past, and it's probably worked for him. When a young person asks him a valid question, he will ask them if they own their own house, ask them what kind of car they drive, say that they're uneducated, attack their job. None of those attacks makes the question being asked less valid. It doesn't matter if the person is homeless, doesn't matter if they're uneducated, doesn't matter if they're unemployed. People like Vince only use those tactics when the question being asked they cannot answer. They do the same thing when you mention the 99-point-something% loss rate. They can't argue it, they can't defend it, so they go into attacks. Personal attacks against the individual. It's a deflection tactic. Everyone listening, please be aware of this when you're talking to people in MLMs and they will start attacking you personally. Whether you're educated or not, whether you're rich or not, doesn't make your point or question any less valid. Don't fall for this.
Go and get a mobile home. People always crack on my home. Mobile home's nice, and I got new living room furniture coming in, and stuff. I only spend like $80 a month in electricity, literally. All I did is drop $50,000 cash. I got no rent to worry about, no house bills, cars are paid for. I live using the FIRE method, financially independent, retire early. But I will never retire, folks. I'm going to always be working. I actually got a job interview next week, actually. So I'm going to go back to work, and I'm going to still do my podcast.
I'm from the hood of South Central LA. So I grew up in a gang-infested, drug-infested environment.
Gary's backstory is all over the place. In our first conversation, he tells me he's from the gang-infested, drug-infested hood. But in an interview that came out a year earlier, Gary says that his life growing up was one of immense privilege.
Well, my dad bought his first home in 1961, and then as time went on, he bought 2 homes on the block. Then he bought 3 homes on the same block. Then he bought an apartment complex. And then he bought a parking lot next to a church. Then he bought the church. He just kind of kept going with that. So it was great, man. So being a kid, you know, in the 1960s for our family was the Cleavers. We really were the Cleavers. I'm serious, man. I never wanted for money. I never been broke a day in my life. My parents have always had money. My dad gave me a home. My dad gave me a home for my wedding gift.
His contradictions continue when he talks about his education.
I did not go to college. I don't have any formal education past high school. As a matter of fact, I repeated to 12th grade.
But then, in one of his Zoom meetings, Gary is telling this story about how he would call restaurants that were fully booked, trying to get a reservation for his wife's birthday, where he refers to himself multiple times as Dr. Kornegay.
I'm Dr. Gary Kornegay. Dr. Kornegay, man. Dr. Kornegay. Thank you so much for helping me out earlier.
I did a lot of research for this video, and I could not find a single thing online that would confirm to me that Gary is a doctor in any sense of the word.
I don't own the restaurant anymore. I don't own the publishing company anymore. I don't own the record label anymore. So I'm not saying that I own these things. I was trying to tell you that I failed in all of those businesses.
I've seen this a lot in my experience with MLMs, where a recruiter talks about how some past business of theirs failed and how their MLM was the opportunity that turned everything around for them. I think the point of this is to convince people how amazing their MLM is, but to me it just reaffirms what I've always believed, that the people at the top of these MLMs actually have no business acumen whatsoever and have failed at every other form of legitimate business they've tried their hand at, and so now they've opted for deceiving people into a pyramid scheme instead.
I built the same company for 33 years, and